Another day, another best ball draft here on Stochastic. We're hopping into the world of DraftKings best ball, competing for our share of $15 million in a sport that's not as easily figured out as your DFS sports out there. Of course, there's no easy projections to use from Stochastic to make the big paydays. You got to build teams. You got to do it over and over again, as we are doing here Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. Besides last Thursday, where Google Cloud, I think, was down is what it was. As a result, StreamYard wasn't working. So I, of course, could not get on stream with you guys, but we are back today. And of course, I am in a draft room here picking the one hole. I saw this chat from Jason right before the start of the stream. Jason, if you want to get alerted to when I'm doing drafts on stream, both on here and in general, you can join my Discord down below. But otherwise, it's going to be whenever we fill, when I start the stream. It's how it goes here. But of course, I want to give you guys the rules of thumb for best ball because like we talked about in the beginning, and it was me being mostly glib about it. But best ball, not quite as easy as plugging in things to his DFS sim. Definitely not quite as simple as Stochastic makes it for you to play DFS, whether it is your MLB on a daily basis, whether it is NBA Showdown, NFL. You guys know all the sports that they cover at this point. But basically, you are trying to stick to some basic principles to give yourself a shot at winning the most money you can, and that's building teams that make sense. Number one, being aware of average draft position. You'll see ADP here on the screen on this platform, any other one you're drafting on. It's the most important thing to keep in mind because basically it's a market-based pricing what you're looking at. If you want to have a DFS equivalent, your ADP that you see on the draft sites is like your median projection again. So yeah, you could go in the first round at the first pick, like I'm going to have here. You could reach all the way down and take a Nico Collins if you think he's so great. But in reality, you're not putting yourself in an advantageous position when you do that. You want to draft Jamar Chase, have the shot at him. You want to draft Saquon if you're getting a bunch of drafts in and trying to diversify your exposures. But basically, being tethered to ADP to some extent is always a good idea. Number two, stacking and correlation. Much like in DFS, you want to stack your QB with wide receivers, tight ends. You can also be more generous, allowing RBs in more so it doesn't have to be as direct of a correlation as it is in a regular DFS slate. You really want to get the rising tide of an offense, and that's your rule number two. We are on the clock here, so let's make our pick. And I've not gotten a ton of 101s, whether it be on DraftKings or other platforms. So I'm happy to get my Jamar Chase exposure whenever I can. Feel like I've gotten a lot of 2 holes, a lot of 3 holes. Saquon Barkley will fall in rooms sometimes to 3-4 lately. So I've gotten my exposure there. I do want to make sure I'm getting Jamar Chase after the explosive year he had last year. Certainly, if you want to critique Jamar Chase, you can point out the fact that his target share very similar to T. Higgins' teammate, but still for Jamar Chase, a guy that I think really the explosive ceiling we all know about, the ability to take a 10-yard play and turn it into an 80-yard touchdown. Not a lot of guys can do that to the same extent. I would say even Justin Jefferson, for as good as he is, I don't think he breaks those plays out of nothing quite as much as Chase does. So that'd really be, for me, Jamar Chase, making sure we get exposure. Really not a brave take here. And of course, your third rule of thumb that we talked about, average draft position, being aware of that, stacking and correlation. And this really is going to be the biggest one. So a lot of people on Twitter that even have had success in best ball, they don't grasp it's not really all about advance rate. Obviously, you want to advance as many teams as possible. If you're putting in 150 teams, you're expected to advance. It doesn't matter what number you're putting in. You're expecting to advance about 16% of that and change because that's how many people advance out of every situation. 2 out of 12 is advancing in the pods on this site and other sites out there as well that have that pod format. So that's fine. People care about advance rate a good amount. What you really want to care about is the payday at the end of it all for best ball, where that's where the biggest money is. Caring about, advance rate is like caring about, how am I doing at halftime of the NBA Showdown slate? Everything's going to change that back half of the year, so you want to keep that in mind, both in best ball and also in a Showdown slate. You don't get any money for winning the second half, or winning the first half, rather, Thunder Pacers. The point being is basically everything's paid out in week 17. That's where your material values realize, your expected values realize. So you want to really keep that in mind. You're building teams that are meant to be tournament war ready, basically able to go through 3 rounds of playoffs, able to beat on DraftKings a 1,000 person field in the finals. That's what you're trying to achieve in best ball. So those are the 3 most important things here. And there'll be more that we talk about along the way, of course, that we hit on every week. Let's see, shout out Jack Flash, who did join before the show. So welcome aboard, Jack Flash. Glad to see him being a Stochastic member on here. Got C Money, my former AIM name, also on here for me. Glad to see it. And I appreciate you catching all the lives, Jack. Glad to see it. Love the 2-hole. Yes, Gabe Davis, thank you for that's a splash play joke. It's not a Stochastic stream joke. Right now, this time of best ball, though, we've talked a lot about in previous week, kind of the themes of where we are at the point of the best ball season. I would say that this time of the best ball season, what you're looking at for the most part is really kind of just people looking for reasons to get different, looking for reasons to take different players. But at this point, without OTAs going, without there being any sort of, real things that are going to be newsworthy items, this guy is going ahead of this guy in a rotation. This wide receivers with the starting group, it's kind of said the same thing in 2 different ways. This running back has had this other guy in the depth chart. This rookie is buried. Those news items matter a lot. Right now, we're not going to get those. So what you're going to get the next couple of weeks is your athletic reporters kind of filling out think pieces, putting out their takes based upon what they saw, what they've what they've heard from the team, sometimes what they're pulling out of their ass. That's sort of what you're getting right now in at this time period. So what's important is really being disciplined, absorbing values, because a lot of times I think drafters that are drafting from, in particular, pre-NFL draft through when best ball concludes, which is that first opening kickoff week right after Labor Day, basically people get bored. So they just start clicking different names. They'll start reaching for guys. They'll start not taking guys as much. You'll see random guys fall. For me, I've been doing some drafts on a slow draft format where it's you make a pick every 8 hours. I'm getting Devontae Smith a lot in rooms lately. I think because people just don't find it to be a fun click. I actually looked him up because I was like, why is he falling 10 spots in all these rooms? And it wasn't really a newsworthy reason for it. It was just that he was falling. I think because people got tired of making the click. So something to keep in mind here is like really being disciplined in best ball is always the most important thing. Even though it's fun to spam wide receiver. If you love running backs, fun to spam them as well. Fun to get your elite players. Sometimes too many people getting too many elite QBs in there. You really only want one. But it's fun to spam everything here, but being disciplined and keeping your teams balanced can be probably the most important thing we have here. J.K. Dobbins Broncos season, that has broken. I think it broke while we were on stream on Tuesday. But Dobbins coming in to Denver, certainly leading to R.J. Harvey falling in some rooms. I still think he's not falling as much as he should. In my opinion, R.J. Harvey should already be down to like a 70, 75 ADP. Just he really lost one of the big bets. One of the reasons that people were making that big bet on him. But we can talk more about the rookies as we go. We're on the clock here. We got Jamar Chase. We also have week 17 correlation with Trey McBride here, so that's easy. And in fact, we also have T. Higgins right here. This is a fairly chalky, not too unique start. I suppose we could reach up for Chase Brown as well, get different there, and still be stacking Cincinnati, Arizona. And you know what? I'm going to do that. I think the logical thing, a lot of people do picking in the spot would be, oh, cool, I got the Bengals double back to me, got Trey McBride as a bring back for week 17. I'm good to go. I think getting Chase Brown here, balancing the team a little bit better, getting, frankly, a running back last year who had one of the better red zone roles in football. Chase Brown, I think people sleep on sometimes how important it is just to say that a guy has a market cornered in terms of red zone touches for a team. And Chase Brown, overall last season, finished with 2.8 red zone rushes a game, 0.9 red zone targets a game. Overall, 3.7 red zone opportunities a game when you combine those together. And again, these are the kind of stats that I think matter when you're thinking about best ball. And that includes the front half of the year, I guess maybe a little bit less than that, where you had Zach Moss taking a good amount of work away. The Khalil Herbert experiment didn't really work out for him as a backup there, so it became mostly Chase Brown at that point. But I think Chase Brown's undervalued. I still like T. Higgins. Think that, again, he got very similar work to Jamar Chase last year in terms of the target share. But Chase Brown getting good red zone work, 15% avoided tackle rate guy. I would say pretty much average for a high volume, running back. He's not an elite player, but I think he's better than what they have in that running back stable right now. So very happy to get Chase Brown still, even though Higgins would have been a perfectly viable click as well. Next time, take Chase, McBride, and Harrison, throw everyone for a loop. Honestly, again, another thing you make the case for, and that's what we talk about here. It's kind of like the same principle, and I do talk a lot about DFS when we're doing these best ball streams. I do think for you guys that are watching on Stokastic's channel, you probably know DFS really well. You might not grasp the best ball stuff quite as much. When you are building teams like this, and let's say you get the one hole that I'm in right now, the 101 spot, so you can see my adorable little splash play avatar on here. If you get the spot a couple times and you have the same players available, it'd be logical to Chase McBride, Higgins in one build. It'd be logical to do Chase McBride, again, Harrison reaching for him in another build. It might be logical to do Saquon Barkley with McBride and Higgins. You want to think about best ball that way, especially if you are playing on DraftKings, where you do get that free entry, of course, when you are playing for the first time DraftKings best ball this year. You put in $120 entry, you get a second one for free right away. So 2 shots to win $15 million up top. But if you're putting in 150 entries, something like that, even if you're putting in 50, you end up getting the same spot over and over again. It's important to make little deviations against yourself for players, that are going these first couple rounds, because this is where really in best ball, like you'll have some players that spike later on in a draft. For the most part, you're going to realize your most value, your highest upside players these first few rounds. So getting Jamar Chase, getting McBride, getting Harrison, getting Brown, if you want to attack Arizona, Cincinnati, there's different ways to attack it. So it is obviously, I would say on paper, one of the highest total potential week 17 games with two defenses that, in particular, Cincinnati's, I don't think got any better here. And if they lose some guys like Trey Hendrickson holding out, things could get worse for Cincinnati as well on defense. But Arizona, a team too that played some shootouts last year. So we like the spot. Shout out Jamie here. My first time checking out this podcast. Glad to see it. We are here on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern doing the best ball drafts from now as long as DraftKings keep footing the bill. And do check out DraftKings as well. I did mention the tournaments here, getting that free entry. But download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 best ball lineup. And again, get that second shot for free. It's $15 million in total prizes. First place is $2 million, which is tied for the industry's top prize. So you are getting your shot at the biggest payday you can get really in fantasy. And that's, I think, an appealing thing. If best ball, if you are, again, being stubborn about sticking to your principles with it, not getting stupid with it, not thinking you know better than the markets necessarily all the time, you'll do well in best ball. It really is just a game of getting your lotto tickets aligned as best you can, getting your little turtles and hoping they can get to shore or whatever, back to the water, whatever turtles, whichever way baby turtles go, it's where you want your best ball lineup to go. It's something I regularly forget. All right, we got a pick coming up here. We got 2 picks coming up here. I feel like lately on streams, I've either been in the 12 hole or picking in the 1 hole, and I am just having to stall in between my selections for very long periods of time. We got Jameson Williams here. Do like him as a click. Looks like, yeah, somebody already took Joe Burrow. Well, the last pick was Joe Burrow. Okay, I didn't pay attention enough to see that. I'm cool with JMO here. There's been a lot of positive talk about Jameson Williams in camp so far, and I do think that he's a player I want to get more shares of. I think there's a shot he moves up to the 30s as the summer goes on and the hype builds more because the coaching staff is really talking about the bunch where he's faster, he's stronger, all that kind of stuff. Think this feels like another receiver spot. Sutton, I don't mind. Travis Hunter, I've probably got more of than I should. He's falling in ADPs right now. I'm not really sure why. I'm going to go Cortland Sutton here. I think you make the case for having gone Hurts and Devontae Smith there, but especially because we lost out on Burrow. Again, people really frantically rushed to take Joe Burrow, and the Higgins drafter here. Okay, he took Burrow and Hurts. And I'll say it again, and I say this, sometimes people watch the streams, they get mad if you point out they're not drafting in a plus EV way. Like you have here a guy taking Burrow with Higgins, that makes sense. You put Jalen Hurts on top of that, you're spending a lot of draft capital in the onesie position, and you're probably burning money on here. Your advance rate's going to go down exponentially because this guy's number one, not spending enough capital at receiver right now. Number two elite QBs, you're chasing the same position, the same onesie position where only one player can make it in a given week. Not usually the way you want to build. And I would say too, even if, he had risked me taking Joe Burrow, not that I would have, but it would certainly been an option. He takes Burrow here. It's like, there's a lot of players who can get Joe Burrow, sometimes the 70s on other platforms. I think it happens on DraftKings too. If you're patient, you wait for Joe Burrow, you could squeeze out one more draft pick of value. And I think he compounded his error there. You're taking Joe Burrow early. You're adding another QB on top. Not really what you want to do. And again, people don't like to hear it because people think because they've played, redraft best ball or redraft football rather, since they were kids, it's like, oh, I know best ball. I could hop in, I'll get some player takes off and I'm going to crush. And in reality, being disciplined about knowing draft capital buckets, kind of keeping things aligned, really being mindful of the fact that, okay, I took 2 RBs early. I now want to make sure I'm grabbing 3 wide receivers or my tight end comes later, my QB comes later. Just being mindful of the balance of your lineup and how ADP is aligned this year. It's more important than ever. In previous years, and part of what really got me into best ball is like there's a real advantage in spamming 0 RB, just basically ignoring running back for your first 4 or 5 rounds, then hitting RB round 6, round 7, and trying to make your team that way. In the current structure here, the price tags have caught up, have started to make more sense. DraftKings, you can still build 0 RB, but for the most part, building balance is going to be your best approach. And you'll see usually in rooms, 2, 3 drafters not building balanced in a way that they also then don't catch up on it. And that's probably just money being left on the table. So you don't want to be that guy, even though it hurts to hear. You don't want to be that guy. QB points are less important on a PPR site as well. Double elite QB is shit. Nolan, our guy, OMG, has been in a lot of rooms out there. You've probably seen him on the top of some DFS tournaments as well. Very good at both things. But yes, that's correct. You're leaving points to the table. And also, too, one of the general rules of thumb I have at QB, it's not important enough to make my top 3 rules that we talk about in every video to try to give you guys watching on Stochastics something to work off of. But just being mindful of the fact that, any QB can beat out a Josh Allen in week 17 for the most part. And that's really what you're looking for. Josh Allen being, in my opinion, your apex predator at QB. Lamar, I would say similar thing. Jaden Daniels, my beloved boy from last year, who I'm not getting as much of this year at that elevated price tag. Another guy where it's, same thing. These guys have crazy ceilings, but you'll still have situations where a correlated 25 points from Jordan Love a couple years ago, one guy, a tournament on the other side, an underdog, won him the big money on there. that beat out some rushing QBs that had higher point totals, because you need the nuts in best ball, but sometimes you don't need like the absolute nuts. Like you just need something that's close enough to it, but puts together a whole lineup better. Like I like Cam Ward a lot. I don't think I don't think a lot of people out there would believe this, but I feel strongly about it. And I'm the Jane Daniels guy, so you can trust me. I think Cam Ward has a ceiling come week 17 that can break a slate, because he's playing number one, shitty New Orleans team in that week. That's probably going to be, I would say, just tanking for a pick, for the most part here as they rebuild under Kellen Moore. Number two, a defense not very good. I believe it's at New Orleans for that game as well, though I don't have my week 17 schedule in front of me. I'm talking then a dome game. But no matter what, even if it's at Tennessee, like Cam Ward being an explosive player who I think can create big games for Calvin Ridley, one of the running backs there having a good game, like your Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears, who should be in a timeshare. Chikakonko at tight end is a late value pick. Even guys like Malik Ayumanor, Tyler Lockett, they're free for Tennessee. Those are guys that can spike if we do have a good week 17 there, or if, Cam Ward's just good. I think that can beat out potentially, with Josh Allen in certain situations. The combination of having this theoretical Tennessee offense that blows up might be easier than having Josh Allen plus Khalil Shakir, or, Josh Palmer. And I like Josh Palmer a lot, but I question those guys having like sub 20-point ceilings in a real way. You don't know what's going to win in week 17. So a QB in particular, there's a lot more potential for your QB to put up 25 points, 30 points, and have it be more correlated than Josh Allen's 27 points that he gives. He's grounded a couple touchdowns. And people love elite QBs, and I get it. Like I take elite QB too, and it aligns in the right way, and I feel they're kind of the best pick on the board from what's left. But people really think elite QB is going to solve your entire issue, and it's like, no, you can find 50 to 20 QB points any given week. Like a guy like Baker Mayfield outperformed Jalen Hurts the majority of last year, and that's not the ADPs last year were incredibly disparate. So that's my QB rant here. Hopefully this guy will take another QB so you can really jam it home. We got Romo Dunze here, who is one of my favorite picks left. I would like to get more going at RB. And you know what? I think that works. We can make kind of a double Chicago bet. Yeah, I can live with that. Romo Dunze, click number 1. DeAndre Swift, click number 2. Chicago, I really thought, based on some of the early whispers and innuendos out there, really thought they were going to go a different direction at running back. I thought they were very live for Ashton Genty, and maybe it was just the fact they didn't want to trade up, and that was it. He went to the Raiders, and that was kind of the end of the game as to why that didn't happen. But I thought they're going to improve the running back room meaningfully. And there have been positive reports for a Kyle Monson guy who's coming out of Rutgers. They took him in the 7th round. Normally a guy going, I would say, after round 5 as a rookie, you're not really thinking has any shot. Maybe because it's Ben Johnson. He's coming in. This is their first running back they've picked. Maybe it matters more. But it seems like you're going to get DeAndre Swift leading that backfield, Roshan Johnson in there. You can play special teams and also, decent pass protector, play some third downs, get some goal line work. It seems like Chicago's going to be a really clean backfield. And I do think with the Ben Johnson of it all, they're going to make that team appreciably better. Caleb Williams, a guy that even though I think the advanced analytics really unfavorable to him, really had some accuracy issues. His EPA numbers that one of the metrics that I swear by, expected points added, not that high either. But still a guy where he ran about 5 times a game. He did create some decent fantasy days, had days where he created, I think in particular, a compelling stack with Keenan Allen, who's not on the team. So hopefully Romo Dunze soaks some of that up. But I like Chicago. I think Chicago's a team. I don't think that's a hot take. I think Chicago's a team I really do expect to meaningfully beat out their ADPs. And for Romo Dunze, there's been a lot of talk so far about DJ Moore being concerned about his role. Ben Johnson already had to have a talk about him, or talk to him rather, about his attitude and not doing the physical, demonstrative, kind of bitchy things they did in the sideline, walking off the field. Can't do that anymore. And DJ Moore said to the media, hey, like I don't know what my role is going to be this year. It seems like that really bodes well for Romo Dunze, who right now in camp is the only guy getting kind of positive reports. Luther Burden's been hurt with a soft tissue injury. Colston Loveland, who's going to probably get a good amount of targets at tight end. He's not healthy yet. They have a training plan for him to get back out there come training camp. So I think Romo Dunze right now is pretty undervalued. I would say he and Juwan Jennings, who in this room went at pick 60, his ADP should start coming up now that Brandon Ayuk is likely to be on the PUP list and out the first 4 weeks of the year. But I think Romo Dunze, Juwan Jennings, 2 of my favorite clicks in this range. And I like a lot of guys like Chris Godwin. I think is still a strong click. Jordan Addison, as long as he can absorb that suspension risk, that he's probably going to be out the first 3 games of the season with his previous DUI in Southern California. I think he's still a good click. This range is pretty nice to make it up at receiver if you do get your RBs early. Yeah, I'm not an Olamide Zacchaeus guy, but I think he's certainly on the roster. And one other lesson with best ball really was important for me last year, where I did stack up a lot of commanders late because I love Jaden Daniels. And I was like, look, Jaden McLaurin, that's the easy part. Everything else, they can hit. I did not do a good job balancing it out, where I was taking some Jahan Dotson before he got traded to the Eagles, took some Luke McCaffrey. That didn't work out. Obviously, Noah Brown ended up being one of the better plays there. Took both running backs that ended up playing pretty well. The point being is, like, for an ambiguous situation where you don't know the player coming in and how they're going to align in the depth chart, you kind of want to treat that bet as similar, where it's like, I don't know who the Bears' number 3 receiver is going to be behind Remo Odunze and DJ Moore. You should probably take some Luther Burden. You should probably take, who else on the depth chart that would actually matter? Tyler Scott was the first guy that came to mind for me. That's probably not one. Yeah, Olamide Zacchaeus would be the one. That was one I was trying to think of. Sorry, that we already just talked about. Devin Duvernay, even. You probably don't want to take a guy that deep. But point being is, like, these bets aren't necessarily binary. So it is one of those things that you want to keep in mind. Was hoping Kyler Murray would come back. He did not for me. I don't know about Rondale. I think the Rondale days were over after he broke his leg. At least last year. Obviously, he should be healthy again. But I think Rondale's also on a different team. But we got to make a pick here. QB getting double sniped here. Not my fave. Do you think Justin Fields always gives you a good floor at QB when you've been sniped a little bit? So that's the way I'm going to go for this first pick of Justin Fields. And we've got the Chicago bet. I think, unfortunately, on DraftKings, I have to come up a little bit and reach for Caleb Williams. In terms of RBs, wide receivers here, I feel like I'm not missing out on a ton. Brandon Ayuk, I like enough if his price is going to come down. And he absorbed, again, missing a month of the season, but I don't want to do that in this build. So 2 QBs here. We got sniped on Burrow, sniped on Kyler Murray. We will go Caleb Williams and Justin Fields. So team so far, 2 QBs, 2 running backs, 4 receivers, 1 tight end. Probably would have liked to got a little more RB firepower in that first 100 picks, but we didn't do it. Justin Fields, Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift. At receiver, Jamar Chase, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton, Trey McBride, Remo Odunze, Caleb Williams. Jared Goff would have also been a viable click, I suppose, with Jamison Williams, but I like the Chicago bet with Caleb a little bit more, at least for this team. And Fields, I really find it hard to not click Fields if I don't have a QB, and my stacks have gotten kind of gobbled up. Maybe should have just taken Goff and Caleb Williams, but the rushing upside for Fields to me, and the best version of an offense he's probably ever had, one that'll be built to have him in, and has Lions principles. A lot of talk in the Athletics wrap-ups here, of which I think really most important reads you could have in best ball, and really for football to prepare for DFS as well. Keeping up with stuff in the Athletic, every beat reporter, if you can read all the ones that are about offensive players all summer long, I would say that's your summer reading homework that I would give you if you were a grade school student. But reading that stuff's really important. They talked about the Jets a lot, trying to bring in these Lions principles with the fact that obviously Aaron Glenn's now their head coach, coming over from being a defensive coordinator over there. But Tanner Engstrom's also a guy coming as a pass game coordinator from Detroit. And apparently they're trying to build an offense really heavily skewed towards Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson. The big thing for me with Justin Fields, though, and I took him here, obviously, I think if you have Garrett Wilson with him, it does feel a little bit better because really I expect him to be the one player to spike in that Jets offense the most. Obviously had some decent games last year, even with Devontae Adams in tow. Though certainly that did kind of decrease the ceiling a little bit week to week. This year, they've got nothing. And the Athletic beat reporters have talked about that at length, basically. The expectation that perhaps Breece Hall might be the wide receiver too, functionally, in terms of targets. They have Josh Reynolds there. We know he's not really a guy that matters. Malachi Corley is apparently not a favorite of this new regime. Basically kind of got propped up by the guys who were previously here and no longer there. So I like Justin Fields a lot, but I think for me, my critique of myself here taking Fields, without Garrett Wilson, we're making a bet that basically Chase McBride, Chase Brown is a better combo than taking Garrett Wilson a few picks early. It's possible. Is it bad that I drafted 3 RBs in my first 3 rounds? Bijan, Achane, and Chase Brown. 3 is a little bit OD. Yeah, I mean, ideally in that kind of build, you would take those 3 running backs and not take running back for a very long time afterwards. So at the very least, if you do that, that gets you better. But generally, you could see some of these builds here, like this guy, 3 RBs in 4 rounds. And then he takes Pacheco on top. I would say he's compounding a mistake here of draft capital. He's not dead or anything. You got Drake London, got Waddle. I don't really love, but people do. Addison, fine. Mooney's a good click. So not dead, but like, you just want it to be more balanced. Like basically, if you're taking 4 RBs here, only 2 receivers in your first 6 rounds, like this guy, you'd want to then start to hit receiver pretty hard here and get, 5, 6 receivers overall by the time you're in round 10. Just it's thinking of it, I don't know. Thinking of it like Double Dare, if you guys remember that, this might be a boomer reference at this point. How they would fill up those things with like the line on it. It's like, oh, you got to fill up this thing with water until it gets this line or fucking the green slime or whatever. And it's like you're trying to fill the thing up. You want to fill those things up pretty evenly as much as you can. And that does mean not in terms of counting stats, but in terms of being mindful of the round. So like if I take Justin Jefferson, you could make the case to keep taking receiver because receiver is so valuable for spike weeks, and you don't really get, late receiver spike weeks like you do with Chase, Jefferson, Neighbors a little bit later, all the guys you want to name in the first 3 rounds. You could do that, then you still want to then get RB in at some point at decent capital when you take your receiver run and that's over. And that's, again, a change from previous years where, like, I think you were more comfortable spamming 5-6 rounds of receiver. Now I think you go 4 rounds of receiver to start. That's what your modern extreme zero RB build is. And this is like really dorky talk about best ball, so I apologize. I'm probably talking over some people's heads, and just meandering as well. But point being, like, anytime you're going really heavy one position, especially RB, you're drafting with some of the least sharp drafters. And frankly, those people had success with it last year because receiver was kind of a dumpster fire. And I think mostly due to more injuries at receiver than RB, some bad luck at receiver at the start of the year and kind of bounced out by the end. I think that this year you're not likely to find that be as profitable of an outcome as some people got last year. That's my rant about too many early RBs. Still want to get some. Again, I'm down to take some, but too many is never really the move. We have 2 RBs, so we do want to get an RB around this go round if we can, but it's not really a great RB spot. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, there's certainly bets to make for him. Ugh. Look, I expect Chase Brown to make my lineup a lot. I am going to go Rashid Shaheed because I want to get more receiver firepower in. I feel like only having 4 at this point is a bit of a short-sighted thing. And I'm going to go Colston Loveland. I have no issue with Ramondre Stevenson. I think there's going to be a way to make it up at RB, just given how DraftKings ADP works a little bit later on. So Loveland, we have our stack with Chicago with Caleb Williams. We have an elite tight end with Trey McBride. I'll take a big swing at tight end with Colston Loveland, who was a 40% target per route run guy at Michigan last year, but that offense was fucking bullshit. So that's part of why he did. But certainly you see him go top 10, go ahead of a guy like Tyler Warren, who went to the Colts. I think that's a pretty big cosign for Colston Loveland. So I'll make that work, hopefully. Your wide receivers, the 3 RBs, Sutton, Flowers, Odunze. I mean, you made it up pretty well at receiver, but I would add another receiver your next round if you can. You definitely would want to get, if you're going to take 3 RBs early, getting to 5 receivers out of your top, 85 picks or so probably should be the move. But no matter what, generally a good rule of thumb is have to have at least 4 receivers in your top 100 picks, 5 ideally in your top 100, no matter what you're deviating for running back, tight end. So try to keep it in mind. But, PPR does give you a little more wiggle room too, for sure. Loveland over Njoku in a vacuum, mostly because the Chicago bet. For Chicago bet, for Njoku, I would say vague concern for me that you do have Harold Fannin coming in as sort of a unique weapon. And sometimes when teams draft, intentionally a unique weapon like Harold Fannin, who got a ton of targets in college, did play bullshit competition at Bowling Green, but still, did play really well against it. For him, I think that you're running into a situation where, for Njoku, that is, they might want Fannin to do more unique things that maybe Njoku can't do, even though Njoku is a perfectly fine pass catcher. Or he just takes some work away and they have kind of schemed ways they want to get him, kind of like an Isaiah Likely type. And you're looking at Njoku being your Mark Andrews, where that can hit, sure, but some weeks it's going to come down a little bit. I have no issue with Njoku, but for Chicago stack, I really don't love Cleveland bets overall, to be totally honest. Like, I'll take your Quinshon Judkins falling past ADP a lot in rooms I've seen. I'll take him sometimes. Judy, I really don't take much of. Tillman, I should take more of, but I'm not a big fan. I just think the QB situation there is not great. Though for Njoku, like if it is Joe Flacco starting, having Joe Flacco start for the year, probably going to help Njoku get some big games early on, because I imagine he'll really rack up PPR points. But I don't know. Cleveland's one of those teams I just think is like really bad and hard to put together, because who's going to play week 17? Like if you had to bet on it, I don't know. So the trickle-down effect is me just taking less Cleveland overall, because that basically rules you out of them, being somebody you could stack with later on. That could be a blind spot by me. J.K. Dobbins at one point going for free in these drafts, 18th, 19th, 20th round. Now he's up to pick 133 in ADP. So you could see the swings that you'll see sometimes throughout the course of a summer when a guy signs somewhere when something opens up. So for Dobbins, Steep price tag, but I think still a fair one for now. And one thing that is important to note for Dobbins, even though people think RJ Harvey is going to be this great pass game back, Dobbins is a guy who was trusted in pass protection last year by the Chargers. Didn't get a ton of targets overall. For Dobbins, he was targeted at 19.4% target per out run. Negative 0.32 EPA per target means you probably don't want to throw him targets if you can. But, had good targets overall. He was out there for passing downs because he's able to hold up. Dobbins can eat into Harvey's pass game more than, again, the Harvey believers want to believe. People really like RJ Harvey too much for a guy that had like a 20% avoided tackle rate, playing lesser competition at Central Florida. Central or South, I always forget which. But either way, for RJ Harvey, just like he needs to come down a lot if Dobbins is going to come up this much. RJ Harvey College. I think it's Central, right? Yeah, UCF Knights. There we go. Central Florida, South Florida, both not really composition you want to have. You got it. Gabe Davis knows. Full fading Judkins. I'm not full fading him. I do think he's overvalued. I'd rather have Caleb Johnson in that range personally, but I just don't love rookie RB prices overall. I mean, I've said that on enough streams. Even Hampton, I think Hampton's probably an easy number 2 back in this class behind Genty. In terms of guys, especially, could be out there for 3 downs. I'm not sold Genty's going to be out there for 3 downs very often with them. Talking up most of the way I have. It's kind of a lightning pass game back. But for Hampton, I love him. I think he's really skilled. But it's like there's still not really an obvious pathway to getting the full workload the way you want to see. I think a lot of the rookies this year, it's kind of the same case, and people are just propping them up because they thought they'd be good pre-draft, but who knows? We've only got 2 RBs, so we need to hit RB a little bit harder here. Man, huge value on Jordan Love. Sometimes in DraftKings, these guys will just fall randomly. Ray Davis doesn't feel like a great bet with James Cook back in camp already, but the ADP is stable for him, so we'll take him here, add some depth. Grendo, mostly contingent value bet, though I do think one of my personal bets is that Christian McCaffrey is not going to get back to his previous workload, given the fact that last year Shanahan, when calling plays, knocked McCaffrey down to about, not Luke McCaffrey, knocked Christian McCaffrey down to 2.8 red zone opportunities a game. Previous years, he was over 5. So for me, I think Garendo has a pretty good shot of getting more work than people realize. If nothing else, he's contingent value. He did spike pretty hard down the stretch last year. This is also me coping for a shitty RB room. So that's how it goes. Let's give the team a read here. I'll get back to some of the chats. And guys, hit the like button if you can. It does go a long way for me here. Of course, trying to fight the algorithm on YouTube because it is a DFS channel, best ball and DFS. It is different SEO stuff. So if you can, show some love at the like button and also show Stochastic if you appreciate this content. And that's a goal here because we are doing somewhat niche content compared to the daily MLB and NBA content that makes so many views here. So please hit the like button, subscribe as well. The team so far I have is a 2-4-5-2. So we've gotten that balance back for the most part. Justin Fields, Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift. So top 2 RBs I could live with. I feel like getting one more RB in Swift's range would make me feel better about that launching pad. But Chase Brown's still a guy that got great red zone work, is a part of a top offense. So he fits the criteria of what we'd want to build around. A receiver, Jamar Chase with the 101, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton. So some reasonable projectable players here with spike week potential. Trey McBride for our elite tight end and our Cincinnati-Arizona correlation for week 17, even though we got sniped on both QBs in that game. Romo Dunze stacked up. Caleb Williams part of that stack. Rashid Shaheed, spike week guy you can hopefully hit. So hopefully some QB on that offense again on the ball. Colston Loveland, Ray Davis, and Isaac Garendo, a part of making it up more at RB. And because DraftKings is a 20-round draft, we could probably add some more draft capital at RB, take more shots on that Marshawn Lloyd tier late as well. Really feel like maybe getting one more RB in. I think perhaps instead of 2 QBs, maybe instead of Loveland, I think would have felt a little better. Though frankly, for me, does Ramondre Stevenson make this team pop that much more? Not sold about that. Tyjae Spears, I like a lot. One tweet I saw, I think it was actually from Ian Harditz over at Fantasy Life. Great Twitter follow if you want meme content as well as some quality data coming through. And a guy I've done shows with before on Stochastic, so that probably helps too. For Ian Harditz, basically, he tweeted out something that was about the playoff points per game. I think it was PPR points per game for all the RBs. Tyjae Spears, a guy who people really hate to click. He's currently my highest exposed player across all the sites right now for the big tournaments. People don't realize Tyjae Spears is like a top 5 RB, or I think it might have been top 6 in terms of fantasy points per game in the playoffs. And that included a game where he went out with a concussion in game. So Tyjae Spears to me is one of those guys in this range. He might have made me feel better about RB than Ramondre would even. But I like him a lot. I think Tyjae is your RB4, RB5 to finish off a room or get close to it. I think he's a great click. But again, I feel like I've been doing a lot of Tennessee propaganda this video for no particular reason either. I have no reason to promote Tennessee besides the fact I think I'm particularly good at determining offenses on the upswing. I think it's one of my skills in best ball. And Tennessee is one I love everything I've heard about them. That's where we are. See what we get here. I'm going to take a sip of water. Shouts to all you guys hanging out. Appreciate all you guys watching live or after the fact. And again, if you want to be tipped off for drafts as well as get access to my own rankings and some news stuff as well, and you post news things and my takes on my Discord, join the OddsShopper Tails package for me. It's linked in the description down below. And you get access to all that stuff, rankings, Discord in particular. And if you guys want to talk about best ball more, particularly guys that are, I think, seem like we have some guys that are a little best ball curious, hopping into the chat. So if you want to learn more about best ball, really happy to talk to you guys in the Discord as much as you want. But also we just have guys that are good at it, have won a lot of money doing it, myself included. So shouts to all you guys for, do join the Discord through the Tails package or through my YouTube as well if you want. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. Using the 33-month chat. This is great content. Thank you, Melissa Harvey. And shout out for you being a member for almost 3 years. That's crazy. A lot of time. A lot of time here on the channel. Good content. Not as good as Dong of the Day song, but it's good. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm off of MLB because you have the full-time guys getting off their NBA time. So I think I'm probably done with Stochastic MLB for the summer. Might do some on my Splash Play channels as well, but TBD because best ball takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of time during the old summer months. All right, we have a 2-4-5-2 build here. You'd see, my God, Nick Chubb has come up quite a bit here. I do think Roschon Johnson is a bet I can make. I don't think there's going to be a situation where one of these backs wins Chicago's backfield. And I like cornering the market, or at least feeling like I am, on Bears touchdowns. So I'm going to go Roschon Johnson with one click, even though we have DeAndre Swift. I'd like to make the RB room a little bit better. I mean, this is just huge value on Hollywood Brown. I do have the small bet on Denver with Cortland Sutton. Hollywood Brown, I think, definitely runs the risk of getting lapped by guys like Jalen Royals, who is young, super athletic, can do some things after the catch. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown at this point of his career is just kind of a catch and fall down guy. But he was targeted a bunch when he got back at the lineup, so hopefully that'll carry over for him, at least for this team. So we have a 2-5-6-2 build. Justin Fields, Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift, Jamar Chase, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, elite tight end with Trey McBride, Romeo Dunze. Romeo Dunze, also be a cool name. Romeo Dunze, though, that is his name. Caleb Williams, Rashid Shaheed, Colston Loveland, Ray Davis, Isaac Guerrero, Roschon Johnson, Hollywood Brown here as a huge ADP value. And again, really, the only way I would click Hollywood Brown is as that big of a value. So that's one of those things in best ball. You don't have to take every player, but every player's got a price, and a guy going 20 picks after ADP. For me, if I need that position, usually that's the price. So, but of course, you can see me draft here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. And I'll also be doing a draft on a different PPR site after this one on my own Splash Play channel. So go check that out. I will link it down below. And on my @Splash Play Pod channel, I do drafts on every platform as well, the 3 big ones. So I recommend checking it out if you want to get some more content from me and, of course, see some other sites. Because I do think, DraftKings, obviously a great site to play on. I'm very happy with the effort they're putting in. For you guys out there, if we're always talking about plus EV things, same thing as you talk about with your portfolio EV for OddsShopper and things like that. You want to get your action in a bunch of different sites if you can. DraftKings, it is really nice prizes. Underdog site we'll talk about, also really nice prizes. And you'll hear their content, referenced a lot across the industry because that's sort of your bigger one. And it's also probably more of an edge playing on DraftKings, to be totally candid. And some other sites out there as well, you'll find really big edges as well, just compared to some of the sharpest platforms. I think it's important to get your action down in different places. And I would say for you guys out there, if you are playing, let's say an underdog, getting money in on DraftKings is a very good thing to do just to balance out your portfolio. To get guys as well at different price tags, guys are cheaper. Some sites, guys are crazily expensive and you don't really know why. That's same thing as getting, bets on different sports books. You have different odds. Something to keep in mind. But DraftKings, I do think for me, as somebody that's played, DFS for years, obviously, really think it's easiest for you to hop in with full point PPR and DraftKings structure because you're playing at a weekly basis for 5 months of the year. So that kind of makes it easier to hop in. Half point PPR, if you play FanDuel, some of the other sites, maybe your brain will connect that more, but just be mindful of there's, little differences between those things and how you approach it. One more touchdown equity on half point PPR sites. For full point PPR, you get away with your Christian Kirk types more. Your Keenan Allen types here at 184 might be one of the best clicks on the board if he's signed somewhere and is valued appropriately. So kind of things to keep in mind. Gabe Davis is one more on DK with less entries. That is certainly a possibility. I've had more finalists on DK, in the Millie Maker tournament. And that's with me not even putting in a ton of entries last year. So I would say for me, if I were to give my DraftKings case study, that'd probably be it. DK is Robert Griffin III's fave. I know that. I know it is. Some states also you only get DK, but the good news is that they made it a lot better over the last few years. And the deals you get too, some of the happy hour stuff that you have going, the bonuses, you're getting the free entry for your putting in your first one. I think it's really nice stuff for the customers in a way that the best ball space needs. All right. Mason Taylor goes, so I can't even get him as a backdoor Jets option. Doesn't excite me very much, but he is still a player that would have correlated. We got 2 picks coming up here whenever this guy makes his latest brilliant click. 5 RBs. Kareem Hunt, not really a guy I'm taking too much of. Think that Eli Mitchell coming in is going to be a better version of him, assuming he can stay healthy. Marshawn Lloyd, I think, rounds out an RB room. One of my biggest stands last year that ended up costing me actively a lot of money. This year we are back in the train because he's fully healthy and I think looking pretty good. Calvin Austin here, I think not a bad click at this point, seemingly cemented as wide receiver 2, according to the coaching staff for Pittsburgh. And it doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers is going to get anybody new in, at least based on early reports. So I'll go Calvin Austin here. I think if they don't add anybody else at receiver, he probably comes up to the 170s on DraftKings over the course of a summer. People realize he's going to be really a guy who spiked a couple times last year. And also, he'll be a friendly slot target for Aaron Rodgers. So that'll be our click here. Marshawn Lloyd and Kendra Miller could be the Spider-Man meme. Well, look, Kendra Miller has had 2 years. Marshawn Lloyd's only had 1. If Marshawn Lloyd gets hurt again and blows this year, then I will agree. But I think we got to give really one of the biggest things, one of the biggest fuck-ups, I feel like, of drafting really myself last year. Because I'm a guy who took, guys like Quentin Johnston year 1 and thought that he had some merits as being a valuable click as kind of a receiver that wouldn't do anything, that they had in the Chargers depth chart. Then ended up being right. Just ended up being, a year. The first year was awful. Last year still wasn't great at times for sure. A lot of jokes made at his expense as he dropped balls, but he did end up having useful fantasy performances, was still relatively an efficient receiver despite the drops. Can't give up on guys year 1 to year 2. So that's definitely been a thing that I've been more mindful of because I think the player, the penchant in best ball is really when a guy has a shit year, people just throw him out. They throw that baby out with the bathwater when he has the bad first year. But if you're talking about players, making the usual leaps year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3, usually their ceiling in about that range for most skill positions. Not giving up on rookies because they sucked in year 1 is usually a good move. Tank Bigsby is another one last year too. Absolutely awful in year 1. I didn't like his college stats. Didn't want to take him. Kind of got talked in because the industry, I thought, made good points about why you take that bet. Last year, I was like, you know what? I think there's still a pathway for him. I'll take him a little bit more, even though I didn't feel so burned by him because I didn't have so much in his rookie year. I think a lot of people, though, felt so burned by his rookie year, they were out in year 2. And it's like, no, he's become a viable goal line back. His avoided tackle rate is actually one of the better marks in the league relative to at least league average. In 18.5% avoided tackle rate, 2.3 red zone rushes a game last year for Tank Bigsby. Still not the most efficient back in the pass game. He probably shouldn't get work at all. He's been bad there for 2 straight years, but he improved from year 1 to year 2. Kyron Williams, another one people will defend because he had a high ankle sprain, but year 1, he was an awful rookie pick. Year 2, he became the belle of the ball, forced Cam Akers out of work. So, don't throw out your rookies because they sucked in year 1. And that's my long-winded defense for Marshawn Lloyd to pick 199 here, 192 here. But Lloyd too, injury run out. Maybe you shouldn't give him cover for injury run out because injury run out could reoccur again. But, that's what it is. Raheem Mostert going here at pick 208. Like that as a click, given the fact he's been talked up pretty well. Still should be a mostly Genty backfield, but Mostert doing the same thing he did Achane's rookie year would not be shocking. Not the touchdown equity that he had in Miami, but basically, blocking things up a little bit by being a reliable vet who can be in the pass game, be totally trusted there. I think that Mostert, a nice click on DraftKings at this point. Gatson feels like a reach in round 17. I would agree. But again, people get excited about rookies, and that includes tight ends who have a very limited pathway to getting on the field, but people don't recognize that, especially for a guy or a team like the Chargers that A, wants to run the ball a good amount. B, also, Well, has guys there like Disley and Conklin that could do that and still catch passes. We got a 2-6-7-2 build here. We've got Shaheed. We've got Juwan Johnson. I'm just going to take the stack that's here for me. I don't really need Shuck with it. I mean, is Shuck going to ever make a lineup over Caleb Williams and Justin Fields? Maybe with injury. We've got a big enough New Orleans bet. I'll take Tyler Shuck here. I think if I didn't take Shuck, taking Tyler Lockett as a week 17 correlation would have been logical. But I'm cool with the third QB. We have a 20-round draft. So 3-6-7-3 build is the team so far. We got Justin Fields, Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift, Jamar Chase, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton. Tight end, Trey McBride. He should cover up a lot of warts overall. Romo Dunze, Caleb Williams, Rashid Shaheed, Colston Loveland, Ray Davis, Isaac Arendo, Roshan Johnson. So making it up at RB here. Hollywood Brown, Marshawn Lloyd, Calvin Austin, Juwan Johnson, Tyler Shuck. Again, don't really think we need the third QB, and I don't like to play like risk-averse, drafting generally where, what if I need 5 QB points to advance kind of stuff. But I do think Shuck, when I have the bet on Shaheed, have the bet on Juwan Johnson here to round up my tight end room, I think it works. So we got one pick left. And thank you for the support here from our guy, Reg Kell. Great pick. Really like Shuck if he starts. I mean, he should start, I think, at the very least at some point this year, if not week 1. But I think he should be able to beat out Rattler. Rattler was not the most impressive to me last year. Shuck, I wish were any other rookie in the class, to be totally honest. Like if you gave me Jackson Dart, I've said this sometimes, give me Jackson Dart going where Shuck went, I'd be like, holy shit, him with Kellen Moore, he's going to explode and be a great player. If you gave me Dylan Gabriel going there, I'd go like, I think he's good enough to make that work. Shuck was not very impressive at Louisville, not super accurate, not really the kind of player I like to target normally, but I believe in Kellen Moore a lot. He has, paid dividends for his teams everywhere, paid dividends for me by trusting in him and playing his players in DFS enough. So I like Kellen Moore. Let's see. You got Shuck as your last pick today? Shuck could be valued by the end of the season. Look, it's possible. It's tough because sometimes the data tells me this guy is not the kind of player I think will be good. But you have to trust coaching situations, opportunity situations as well. That's something that I think I've had to correct my process on, where I want my prospects to be like pristine. Like I want them to look like Jaden Daniels did for me last year. Bucky Irving, same thing, though his RAS testing did spook me a little bit because the athletic stuff does matter. But he got a great landing spot, so then that got me back on the train. I think for Shuck, he could be a better player, but the situation's great. Like the situation of like, he can't really fail because like the team probably wants to lose this year. They have to get out of real serious cap hell. And Kellen Moore just being the vessel for Shuck to hopefully be good. Like if you believe in a coach, you should believe in a QB. It's one of my rules of thumb. Whether it's a good rule of thumb, this will be a big test of it for sure. Rattler looks like Patrick Mahomes and throws like Brittany Mahomes. That's tough. Like that's a joke about Dylan Raiola in college that people would make from a rival school. That's a good joke. Shador going to be a great value pick or Flacco. Well, that's the issue, is that you don't know which one it's going to be. If I had to guess, it's Flacco starting. Shador, I think, got too much negative steam in the draft because he is like an accurate QB. He's not, not a downfield thrower, not a runner, which are two fantasy traits you want the most. That's what puts you on a Jaden Daniels. That's what puts you theoretically on a Cam Ward, who's also not a high volume runner, but hopefully can run more in the pros. That's sort of what you're looking for. But for Shador, I agree that he's probably a better QB at this point to start your franchise around. I mean, certainly than Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett has looked better, but we know what he is. I don't know if the ceiling is high enough if you can choose somebody else to do that with. Dylan Gabriel brings a running versatility potentially, and he is, a lot, his numbers at least look a lot like Mini Bo Nix playing at Oregon. That's similar and, very similar, basically the same offense. But Dylan Gabriel, if he were taller, I think would have been a much more appealing prospect overall. There's just no guarantee that Shador is the guy, but the highlights seem good so far. People like Gunnar Helm a little bit. I think mostly because of pre-draft priors. Low target earner. Also got hurt at the combine, if I'm remembering correctly, and then had better athletic testing after that. Still not a guy I'm crazy about, but if you don't like Chikakonkwo, think that Gunnar Helm could be a more traditional tight end and get in the field. There's maybe some utility there. Mostly, I'd say if you have a Tennessee stack, I probably wouldn't take an unstacked Gunnar Helm. Take Mason Taylor if you want the version that's actually going to play. Sort of how I feel about that. We got one spot left, a 3-6-7-3. Really nothing left on the board you want. But you know what? We didn't take a New Orleans RB. I think we could do that. Cam Akers added to the roster. Cam Akers seems to find his way onto the field for teams now with whatever he's doing. So I'm going to go Cam Akers here to round the team in round 20. So final team here, and we can take some chats. See if you have any things you want me to touch on. We got about 7 minutes left here. Of course, MLB Live Before Lock coming up later today as well, so stay tuned for that. Of course, a great show that'll teach you everything you need to know for the MLB slate today. Final team, Justin Fields, Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift as our RB start. Jamar Chase, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton, Trey McBride, Romo Dunze. Big critique here is I think we could have gotten one more earlier RB, and I would have felt a lot better about the team, but it still works. Caleb Williams, part of our Chicago stack. Rashid Shaheed, part of our now newly found Tyler Shuck stack. Really ended up getting heavy on New Orleans late. Colson Loveland, part of the Chicago stuff. Ray Davis, Isaac Arendo, Roshan Johnson. Again, you go RB, starve RB for too long. Got to make sure to hit it back with some volume. Hollywood Brown was a big value. Happy to get him about 22 picks after ADP. Marshawn Lloyd, Calvin Austin, Juwan Johnson, Tyler Shuck, Cam Akers. Probably would have liked to have gotten one more receiver in. I think, again, you take that earlier RB. I then can put a little more volume towards receiver. That's the balancing of a best ball draft, so I'm cool with that part of things. And check out the chats real fast here. Got Air 15 in the 18th round of the DK contest. It's amazing value. Again, he's probably not starting the year, and if the Colts are, playoff viable, he's probably not going to get in the field later either. But certainly for free, you take that shot. But I would want to have two good QBs ahead of him if you can. Who do I like more, Robinson or Slayton? In this draft, Robinson went before Slayton. In my draft, Slayton before Robinson. Wandale should go first on the PPR site, but I think Slayton, he's been a player I've actually taken a lot on stream here when we do these DraftKings drafts. I think he's too cheap on pretty much all the sites. He's going to be your outside receiver, and really all the QB play this year should benefit him. Even Russell Wilson, part of what they talked about recently, kind of a postmortem on Arthur Smith's offense last year with Russell Wilson, that they forced, he forced him to throw the ball downfield more because he didn't want to target the middle of the field. So Darius Slayton, if Russell Wilson doesn't want to target the middle of the field, he'll still get Neighbors a good amount, but Slayton being your boundary receiver, your sacrificial X, maybe get some deep targets, I think is in play. So I like Slayton at his price, but Wandale is a viable click that I should probably take more of. Really think too, if Neighbors were to get hurt, Wandale's probably better contingent value. And too bad I wasn't able to get Murray for the Trey Murray pair. Yes, I agree. Getting one of the Cincinnati or Arizona QBs would have been nice, but that's that. With everyone pushing 3 QBs, what are your thoughts on going 2 top 12 QBs in a build, stacked, of course? Look, I think it all comes down to the balance for everything. Really, and one of the things I will say that I feel like I've said in previous years, but not as much other people, you can't tell anybody that your team's not going to win at the end of it all. But in particular, if you're balancing things out, you can't say that to anybody. If somebody's taking 3 RBs up top and then hitting 3 more in the top 10 rounds, they're probably not going to win. But if you're taking 2 QBs and you're making sure you've gotten 2 receivers around that, 2 RBs around that, you get tight ends, balance that well enough. If you're still making the team kind of work overall with where you're spending your capital, it can work. But when you take 2 QBs in the top 100 picks, it does get a little bit tight sometimes. Even here for me, take a 2 QBs, at pick 99, whatever, in that range, you end up getting a little bit tighter sometimes. So it's, it's trade-offs, balance, sort of how it goes. Hey, my line's going to take Bowers early. I'm cool with it. I mean, it all comes down to how you then hit things. If you're picking, where you're getting Bowers, you're mostly getting him here. Getting Neighbors with him for the week 17 correlation, great. Then you wanted, I think, again, balance it out well. Get 1 RB, get a receiver. This guy, I think, went a little too RB heavy here. There are good picks in both spots here. I would say from my feelings, and really, I think it comes down to the same thing on all the sites. On this side of the board, you can hit RB early, take 2 RBs, and still feel pretty good at receiver, as long as you hit receiver for your next 4 or 5 rounds. On this side of the board, at the end of it, you want to go more balanced RB, wide receiver, RB, wide receiver, wide receiver, RB, wide receiver, RB. That's sort of the way I think your team works a little bit better here. Middle of the board, I haven't really gotten a great feel for overall. I do think 0 RB works the best here, but I can't say that universally in every single site. I think on DraftKings, you get away with it more because you do have you see Kamara, Montgomery, Jalen Warren here. Pretty nice little 0 RB start with guys that still have roles. So different spots of the board, I think, lend itself to different kind of builds, but your mileage may vary, guys. That's it for this one today, guys. Do appreciate all you guys who watch. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. Do check out DraftKings, of course, the presenting sponsor of this show. This is why we're drafting on this channel, drafting on DraftKings. So download the daily DraftKings Daily Fantasy app right now to draft your $20 best ball lineup. Play for your share of $15 million. When you do that, you get a second chance right away to play for another share of 15 mil. So it's a great way to do that. Getting that free entry up top is a nice thing that more sites can definitely stand to do, and DraftKings does it for you. So 2 shots at that prize pool, 15 mil, $2 million to first place. Top 10 finishers all win at least 100K. It's a good way to spend your money right now if you are looking for something to gamble on, because NBA is winding down. Maybe you're not a big MLB fan. Stochastic will take care of you for anything you want to do DFS-wise, but if you want to get some different gambling in and shots of big money, that's what you can do here on DraftKings. So check it out. I'm going to hop onto my channel now for another draft on a different site. So if you want to go play with me on a different PPR site, come over to this Splash Play Pod channel right after this one. I'll be back with you guys hopefully on Thursday at 3 p.m. So barring any StreamYard shortages or Google Cloud going down again, every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. here doing drafts to you guys. And I appreciate all of you hung out today. I'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days. Hit that like button, leave a comment. And of course, good luck, guys. See you soon.